I'm Emily, 35, logistics manager by trade, fixer by default, and apparently just a name on a seating chart at my sister's wedding. I didn't plan on telling this story, but you know what? Sometimes silence feels like a betrayal too. Growing up, it was always me and Sophie. I was the one making flashcards before her spelling bees, patching up her art projects at midnight, talking her down from panic attacks before big exams. And still, she sparkled louder. Our parents called her their little star. I was the one who helped her shine. Fast forward, Sophie meets Liam, all charm and jawline. The kind of guy who calls your career cute while checking his reflection in a wine glass. He and I never exactly vibed. Something about him always felt calculated. But I stayed out of it. Sophie looked happy. That was supposed to be enough. When their wedding plans rolled in, I offered help. Recommended a caterer I'd partnered with for years. Mark. Reliable and calm under pressure. Gave a few logistical tips too. I never expected to be maid of honor or anything, but I figured maybe I'd get a normal seat. Maybe someone would say, "Hey, thanks for making this possible." Instead, I got a folding chair by the service entrance. I arrived early, gift in hand, a crystal decanter with their initials and wedding date etched in gold. Understated, elegant, like me. At the welcome table, a clipboard-wielding planner glanced at her list and said, "Oh, you're marked as a +1. I blinked. "I'm the bride's sister." She frowned. "Oh, okay. But this is what I've got." Her finger landed on my name, scribbled under extras. Before I could process that, Sophie glided over in white chiffon and faux grace. "Hey, Em," she cooed like I'd just wandered in from off the street. "I told the planner about your seat. Hope that's okay. Just got super tight with space. Liam's extended family is massive." I stared at her. "You put me near the kitchen." She smiled. "Not in the kitchen, just adjacent. Plus, you're not part of the bridal party, so." I didn't answer. I didn't trust myself to speak. I just nodded and made my way to the back. My table was crammed between a tray return station and a swinging door. It smelled like rosemary chicken and bleach. From there, I watched everyone else laugh, toast, dance. Our cousin Julia, who once called Sophie irrelevant, had a prime spot. My ex-boyfriend Jacob, who Sophie introduced me to years ago and somehow kept in touch with after we broke up. 2 tables from the sweetheart table. Of course he was there. Of course he smiled when he saw me walk by. I sat quietly, feet aching, air thick with steam from the kitchen door swinging every 20 seconds. Then I stood up, picked up my box, and left. Not dramatically, just calm, steady steps toward the exit. Sophie saw me from the dance floor. She called out, "Em, wait! Where are you going?" I turned to her, the room now slightly hushed. "Just heading out. I figure +1s aren't really meant to stay long." Gasps, a few laughs, mostly confused stares. I didn't care. I walked out with my gift in hand and something heavier in my chest. But I wasn't boiling over. I wasn't breaking down. Not yet. Just loading data, waiting. Because one thing people forget, a logistics manager always knows exactly where the pressure points are. I didn't go home. Not right away. Instead, I drove. No destination, just the road unraveling under my tires like a thought I couldn't quite finish. The night air rolled through the open window, cool and sharp, cutting through the leftover heat of humiliation. I ended up parked on the edge of town, a high lookout point with string lights strung lazily between trees, the city twinkling below like a constellation someone dropped on velvet. And I just sat there, let it all settle. Not just the wedding, the years, the birthdays I organized that no one thanked me for, the late night calls Sophie dumped on me when Liam ghosted her early on, the time I bailed her out when she maxed out her credit card on designer shoes and called it retail therapy, the funny jokes our dad made about me being the independent one, so naturally I didn't need anything, and the seat. That damn chair by the kitchen. It wasn't the insult. It was the message. You're an extra. You don't matter. And that was the moment I stopped pretending I didn't see it. I went home, poured myself a glass of scotch, the fancy stuff, then opened my laptop. You see, I don't just handle event planning. I handle event control, vendor tracking, crisis resolution, paper trails. Sophie and Liam, they used Mark, the caterer I recommended. And they hadn't exactly made it easy on him. 3 days before the wedding, they slashed their guest count, added new dietary restrictions, and underpaid their deposit. I know that because I helped Mark rewrite his logistics file for free. So the next morning, I called him. He picked up instantly. Emily, oh man, I meant to call and thank you again. Couldn't have pulled that wedding off without your groundwork. I'm glad it worked, I said, but I need to let you know. I felt incredibly disrespected at that wedding. I wasn't just a vendor contact. I'm Sophie's sister, and I was treated like a stray guest. Mark went quiet. Then they did underpay. And yeah, last-minute chaos. Honestly, if you hadn't stepped in, it would have been a disaster. That was all I needed, because that meant receipts existed, contracts, breach clauses, and I wasn't going to blow it all up with one dramatic move. No. I started small. First, I canceled the glassware set I'd ordered as part of their wedding gift, a custom collection to go with the decanter. I redirected it to my own address. Might as well enjoy the matching crystal with someone who appreciated logistics. Next, I called Jonathan, a friend in elite travel planning. Liam and Sophie had a honeymoon extension coming up, 3 weeks in Bali, courtesy of Liam's wealthy uncle. I didn't block it. I didn't sabotage anything. I just sent Jonathan a copy of their email thread and asked him to flag them as non-priority clients. He knew what I meant. Then came the cherry on top, an email from Sophie, 3 days later. Hey, Em. Hope we're good. Wedding was crazy, haha. Anyway, could you help Liam sort out the travel hiccup? Flights are a mess. Villa's not responding, and we know you're the magic one when it comes to fixing things. No apology. No mention of the chair. Just a task. I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded the email to Jonathan again and added a note. Please kindly let them know the magic one is officially out of service. That night, I went out with friends. Ate overpriced sushi. Laughed more than I'd planned to. My phone buzzed mid-dinner. Liam. Ignored it. Next, Sophie. Then a voicemail. Emily. Seriously? What the hell? We're stuck in Singapore. Our villa's non-refundable, and the new flights are booked out. Did you tell Jonathan to ditch us? This is beyond petty. And for the first time in years, I smiled. Not because they were stranded, but because I had finally stepped out of the background. Not with a bang, with boundaries. 3 days after the voicemail tantrum, I received a message that was less demanding and more nervous. It was from Liam. Hey, Emily, I know things got weird. I really hope we can move past whatever this is. Sophie's mom follows you on Instagram and she saw something you posted. Sophie's freaking out. Can we talk? Let me back up. Because yes, I posted something, but not out of revenge, out of truth. I had scrolled through social media that morning, sipping my coffee, when I stumbled on a photo dump from my cousin Becca, the one with a TikTok account dedicated to soft filtered brunches and unforgettable moments. Her caption under the wedding album, Dream Wedding for the Dream Couple, so honored to be part of it. Out of 80+ photos, I appeared in exactly one, blurry, back turned, beside the kitchen door. No family portraits, no candid moments, no toasts, no thanks. Even Jacob, my ex, was tagged and in 4 pictures, including one where Sophie was laughing at something he said like they were old friends reunited. I felt my stomach twist, not because I still loved him, I didn't, but because it suddenly made sense. She had always stayed in touch with him, said it was casual. It wasn't casual, it was calculated. The erasure wasn't a slip-up, It was curated, intentional. And I realized something that morning. I hadn't just been left out, I'd been replaced. So I posted, not a rant, not a call out, just facts. A quiet, curated slideshow of behind the scenes photos I'd taken on my phone during setup, me arranging table numbers, helping the florist untangle ribbon, repositioning the signage after wind blew it sideways. And finally, the crown jewel, a screenshot of the seating chart from the planner, which she had accidentally CC'd me on during a chaotic email chain, where I was listed as Emily Bride's sister, +1, seat 37 near service entry. Then I added a caption, simple, blunt, helped secure the venue, got them a catering discount, arrived early, set up flowers, was seated by the kitchen, labeled as a +1. Bride said I should understand, so I left. 2 weeks later, they asked me to fix their honeymoon crisis. I declined. Apparently, that makes me petty. No names, no tagging. But the context was crystal clear, and that's what made it sting. By that afternoon, the post had made the rounds among our family, friend group, and local event network. Former colleagues reached out. One DM read, "Knew you looked uncomfortable at the wedding. Didn't realize it was this bad. That's awful. Also, baller move, honestly." Becca quietly untagged me from her album. My cousin Rachel commented, "Wow. I remember asking where you were sitting. Someone told me you were helping staff. I had no idea. I didn't respond to most. Just read. Let it settle." That night, I got a text from Sophie. "Why are you trying to ruin my wedding memories? What's wrong with you? You seriously need to grow up." I laughed, really laughed, alone in my apartment. Because it wasn't about ruining anything. It was about showing the unfiltered version. They had curated their perfect day and edited me out of it. Now I was holding up a mirror, and they couldn't stand the reflection. 2 days later, the ripple effect hit harder. Mark, the caterer, sent me a heads-up text. "Hey, just FYI, I sent them a late fee notice. Found the clause you flagged. Thanks again. I don't usually chase stuff like this, but felt right this time." What he meant was, I reminded him they breached contract terms by altering guest lists and dietary requests after the deadline and underpaying. 25% penalty. Then I heard from Jonathan, told Sophie and Liam they're blacklisted from concierge services through our agency. Higher-risk clients now. Don't worry, didn't mention your name. They figured it out anyway. And still, I said nothing. Until Sophie's mother, yes, the same one who couldn't wait to call me daughter-in-law a year ago, called me. I let it go to voicemail. She left a 3-minute rant, complete with tearful accusations and guilt trip acrobatics. "I don't know what your problem is, but this has gone too far. Sophie's devastated. Do you really think this is worth blowing up the family over? Over a chair?" And there it was. The chair. To them, that's all it was. A folding chair. To me, it was the punctuation mark at the end of a sentence that had been written over years. One where I played the supporting character in their highlight reel, until they couldn't even bother to write me in at all. So no, I wasn't going to delete the post. I wasn't going to apologize for being honest. And I certainly wasn't going to fix it. But Sophie tried. She created a family group chat, the kind of PR stunt that sounds like unity but smells like damage control. Her opening message, "Hey everyone, just wanted to clear the air. Things got blown out of proportion. Let's all move forward and focus on love and family." I replied, "Happy to move forward when people stop calling consequences drama." The chat went silent. Then came a trickle of truth. My aunt messaged, "We thought you were volunteering near the kitchen. Didn't realize they put you there." A cousin chimed in, "Honestly thought you left because you were sick." Nobody said anything. Sophie left the chat. Liam never entered it. And that wasn't a loss. It was space. The kind I didn't know I needed. A week later, an envelope arrived in the mail. Cream-colored, slightly smudged. No return address. Inside, a handwritten note. Emily, I've been thinking about everything. I didn't see it then, but I see it now. I let Liam take the lead because I thought that was what love meant. I didn't protect you. You've always had my back, and I left you in the back of the room. I'm sorry. For the wedding. For everything before that, Sophie, no defense. No, but you overreacted. Just a moment of clarity. I placed the letter back into the envelope and set it on my desk. I didn't reply. Not yet. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't exposure. It's relevance and choosing whose table you want to be seated at moving forward. And mine won't be near a swinging kitchen door. The envelope sat on my desk for a week. I didn't touch it. Didn't reread the letter. I wasn't trying to be dramatic. I just didn't know what to do with it. Sophie's words rang in my head at the oddest moments. Grocery shopping, folding laundry, pouring coffee. You've always had my back, and I left you in the back of the room. That line cut deeper than any insult. Because it was true. But truth doesn't erase everything that came before. It doesn't undo the times I showed up for her when no one else did. It doesn't unsay the years of being her safety net while she spun like a kite. Untethered, chaotic, but always celebrated. So I left it there. Let it breathe. Then came Thanksgiving. Every year, it's hosted at our dad's house, a low-roofed ranch with peeling white paint and too many chairs in too small a space. I never loved going, but I always went. Because that's what you do, right? Show up, smile, pretend the little cuts don't bleed. This year, I wasn't sure. I hadn't said a word to Sophie since the letter. Liam, unsurprisingly, hadn't said anything to anyone. Our last interaction was a furious voicemail about embarrassing him in front of his uncle, and how they were still dealing with the fallout from the honeymoon mess. He blocked me the next day, which wasn't exactly heartbreaking. The week before the holiday, Dad called me. Hey, kiddo, hope you're still coming. It'd mean a lot. No drama, I promise. I could hear something in his voice. Not guilt, exactly, but fatigue. Like he was realizing things he didn't want to say out loud yet. So I said yes, not to keep the peace, not to play the role, but because I wanted to show up on my own terms. Thanksgiving afternoon, I walked in holding a tray of roasted garlic mashed potatoes and a bottle of wine. People noticed. The room went still, not frozen, but careful. My cousins gave me soft smiles. My aunt avoided eye contact. Dad hugged me a little longer than usual. Sophie wasn't there. I didn't ask why. Later, Dad leaned over and whispered, she said she had other plans this year. Sure, other plans. Probably involved avoiding every person who now knew she stuck her own sister next to a mop bucket on her wedding day. I shrugged. Okay, dinner moved slowly. Lots of small talk and cranberry sauce. Nobody brought up the post. Nobody asked me to take anything down. Progress. After dessert, people began to scatter. A few watching football, some migrating to the backyard for air and gossip. I stayed in the kitchen, rinsing dishes with the tap on low. That's when I heard footsteps behind me. Hey, said a voice. I turned. Sophie. She looked tired. Not in a disheveled way, her makeup was perfect, as always, but in the eyes. The kind of tired that comes from too much pretending and not enough rest. I didn't say anything, just handed her a towel. She took it. I wasn't sure you'd come, she said quietly, drying a plate. I shrugged. Didn't decide until last minute. She nodded. We stood in silence for a moment, the sound of water filling the gap. I meant what I wrote, she said. I know, I replied. She exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for weeks. I was so caught up in the image of it all. The perfect wedding, the Instagram moments, the seating charts. I thought I was being efficient. You were being selfish, I said evenly. She winced. I know. More silence. I thought we could go back to normal, she tried. I shook my head. Normal was never good for me. She looked down. So, what now? I leaned against the counter, crossing my arms. That's not a question you get to answer this time. I know, she said again, voice smaller. I hope you'll let me earn back your trust, even if it takes a long time. I didn't respond right away, just kept rinsing. Then, trust is a lot like those centerpieces you picked. She blinked. What? They looked perfect in pictures, but they were hollow inside, light, fragile. And you threw them out the second the night was over. Her lips parted like she wanted to argue, but she didn't. Just nodded slowly, quietly. We didn't hug. No grand reconciliation, but she stayed. Dried another plate, then a third. When she left later, she paused at the door and said, "Thanks for not making me leave." I didn't say you're welcome. I just said, "See you around." Because forgiveness, if it ever came, wouldn't be wrapped in speeches. It would be earned, dish by dish, moment by moment, slowly. And the funny thing? After she left, people started talking to me more. Like they finally saw me. My uncle asked for help organizing his retirement party. My cousin invited me to her baby shower, front table this time, promise. Even Dad pulled me aside and said, "I should have asked where you were sitting that day. I'm sorry. It wasn't everything, but it was something." The next few months were surprising. Sophie started texting, not often, not asking for help, just checking in. "Hope your week's okay. Thought of you today when I saw Rosemary at the market." Jacob moved to Boston, by the way. That last one caught me off guard. I didn't reply, just filed it away somewhere under not my business anymore. Then one Saturday, she showed up at my door. Coffee in one hand, a bag of pastries in the other. "I didn't bring anything gluten-free," she said. "Because you hate that crap." I smirked. "You remembered? We sat on the porch, talked, watched the neighborhood dogs walk by in tiny sweaters. She didn't bring up the wedding. I didn't bring up the chair. Instead, we talked like sisters, the kind we never really were but maybe could become." Later, as she left, she paused at the bottom of the steps. "I know I can't undo things," she said, "but I want to start being the sister you deserve, not the one who needed fixing." And that felt like the real centerpiece. Not perfect, not polished, but solid, real, and maybe finally meant to last. Spring came quietly. There was no dramatic thaw, no cinematic cherry blossoms falling in slow motion. Just a slow shift, crisp air turning mild, coats turning into cardigans, and the neighborhood kids reappearing like daisies after rain. It had been a few months since Thanksgiving, since Sophie showed up with coffee and something close to sincerity. We hadn't exactly rebuilt anything, not yet, but the debris had been cleared. At least we were speaking the same language again. Liam? He was a ghost. I hadn't heard a word from him since the blocked number incident. From what I picked up through the grapevine, because let's be honest, families gossip better than TMZ. Things were strained. The honeymoon disaster had rippled into everything. Unpaid penalties, catering fallout, travel blacklisting, reputational bruising among his family's inner circle, especially since his wealthy uncle apparently took offense to being misled about the wedding finances. Good. It wasn't revenge. It was just consequence with a delayed fuse. And Sophie? Well, in early April, I got a message. Liam and I are taking space. Not divorced. Just re-evaluating. I thought I'd feel heartbroken. I feel like I can finally breathe. I didn't say I told you so. I had just replied, "Proud of you for choosing peace." That's all I needed to say. Weeks later, she invited me to her birthday. A backyard cookout at our dad's place. No caterers, no flower walls, no filtered Instagram reels. Just a cheap grill, 3 folding tables, and a cooler full of off-brand soda. When I walked in, Sophie waved me over and handed me a pair of tongs. "You're on grill duty," she grinned. "Tradition, right?" I laughed. "Only if you remember I like my burgers medium rare and my boundaries fully respected." She nodded. "Deal." We didn't hug. We didn't need to. I manned the grill. She made potato salad. We argued over mustard ratios and whether pickles belonged on hot dogs. They do, by the way. And when the sun dipped low, When the backyard glowed with mismatched fairy lights, Sophie stood up, raised her plastic cup, and said, "To Emily, for showing me what a sister should be, even when I didn't deserve it." No one clapped, no one gasped, they just nodded, because they knew. I didn't make a speech, just raised my cup and said, "Took you long enough." Everyone laughed. That was enough. Later that night, when I got home, I poured a glass of scotch in the very decanter I once gifted Sophie and Liam, the one I redirected back to myself after the wedding. It stood on a shelf in my kitchen now, beside the crystal glasses that were meant to be theirs. I'd opened it for the first time that night. It gleamed in the soft light, elegant, solid, quietly beautiful. Not a painful reminder anymore, just glass. I leaned back on my couch and watched the light play through it. Let myself remember everything. Not the drama, not even the fallout, but the awakening. Because that's what this really was. Not vengeance, not bitterness. Just a slow reclaiming of space I had always deserved but never taken. They hadn't ruined me. They revealed me. For years I'd been the fixer, the background scaffolding propping everyone else up. And when I finally stepped away, everything they built started to wobble. Not because I wanted them to fall, but because I was the part they never saw holding it all together. And now, I wasn't holding it anymore. Epilogue, the post I made months ago, still sits on my profile. I never took it down. And I never will. Because that post isn't about shaming them, it's about honoring me. Every time someone stumbles across it, they message me. Strangers, old colleagues, distant family. I've felt like that too. This made me cry. Thank you for saying it out loud. One message from a woman I hadn't spoken to since college hit me hardest. I was seated by the bathroom at my sister's wedding, while her new husband's cousin got a front table. Your post made me feel seen for the first time in 10 years. That's the thing about silence. It teaches you how to disappear. But truth? Truth brings people back into themselves. So no, I don't regret anything. Not the post, not the call to the caterer, not forwarding that travel email, not walking out of the wedding with my gift still in hand. Because I used to think walking away was weak. Turns out, it's one of the strongest things I've ever done. And now, when people try to rewrite the story, tell it softer, clean up the edges, I don't argue. I don't scream. I just pour myself a drink, set it gently in crystal, and toast to the woman who finally stopped asking for a seat at the table and built her own. Story 2. You ever live somewhere that doesn't feel like home? That was my life from the time I turned 13. By 17, it was unbearable. My name's Emily. I'm 21 now, but back then, I lived with my dad, his new wife, Claire, and her daughter, Zoe. Zoe was a year older than me, and the kind of person who could do no wrong in my dad's eyes. Meanwhile, I was the walking mistake, the emotional one, the problem child. Never mind that I kept to myself, got decent grades, and barely pushed back. I guess just existing was enough to upset Claire and Zoe. Looking back, I can't say I was surprised when it all went downhill, but I wasn't ready for just how cruel it would get. Chapter 2. The Fall Guy. It started with a watch. Not just any watch, my dad's prized vintage Omega. A gift from his grandfather. It went missing one random Tuesday. I remember coming home from school and sensing the tension before I even stepped inside. My dad was in the living room, red-faced. Claire stood behind him, arms crossed, lips pressed into a judgmental line. Zoe sat on the couch looking like she'd just gotten off a shift in a soap opera, wide eyes, concerned expression, playing the innocent victim. I didn't even get a hello. My dad came at me like I'd mugged him. "Where is it?" he barked. "Where is what?" "You know exactly what," Claire hissed. "The watch. Confused doesn't even begin to cover it." I blinked. "I have no idea what you're talking about." Claire laid into me. "You've been sulking around lately, acting off, desperate for attention. So what did you take it? Thought you'd get a reaction?" Zoe, like clockwork, chimed in with, "I saw her sneaking around your room last weekend." That was a lie. but the kind of lie that felt real enough to be dangerous. And given that I'd been crying at the dinner table lately, grieving my cat, Muffin, who passed after being with me since I was 3, it was easy for them to reframe my sadness as something malicious. Seeking attention, they called it. Not grief, not heartbreak, just drama. My dad didn't even ask for my side. He told me to pack my things, said I was just like my crazy mother, whom he rarely mentioned without some snide insult. He called me ungrateful, said I was lucky to have a roof over my head. Then he told me to leave, just like that. No proof, no discussion, just accusations and exile. Chapter 3, Rock Bottom. I was 17, no job, no backup plan. I stuffed a few clothes into a backpack and walked the 10 blocks to my mom's apartment. She hadn't been in a good place for a while, struggled with her own mental health. But when I knocked, she opened the door without hesitation. Living with her wasn't easy, but at least I wasn't constantly gaslit or punished for breathing wrong. I spent the next 4 years trying to claw my life back together. Got a part-time job, finished high school, put myself through college with scholarships, student loans, and the occasional help from my grandfather, Dad's father, who had always been kind to me, even if distance kept us apart. He couldn't take me in when I was kicked out, but he supported me in every other way he could, and he never once blamed me. Unlike my dad, who never reached out. Not once. Not even when I texted him just trying to talk, to explain. Radio silence. Chapter 4. Return of the past 4 years later. My grandfather was turning 75. He invited me to the party, rented a cozy little farmhouse out in the country. I hesitated at first. I knew my dad would be there, Claire too, and Zoe, obviously. But Grandpa was the only one who never turned his back on me. I couldn't let him down, so I went. Walking into that party felt like stepping into a dream where you're naked and everyone's staring. All eyes, whispers. My heart pounded. My dad was sitting at a table with Claire and Zoe, sipping wine like they hadn't thrown me out like trash. They didn't even acknowledge me. Claire smirked. Zoe avoided eye contact. And Dad? He didn't even blink. I kept to myself, hung out with cousins, chatted with Grandpa, smiled politely while my stomach twisted itself into knots. Then came the toast. Chapter 5. The toast heard round the room. The whole room cheered for Grandpa to say a few words. He stood slowly, glass in hand. His voice trembled at first, old age catching up, but what he said was anything but shaky. He started by thanking everyone, talked about life, family, memories. Then, without warning, he dropped the bombshell. I want to talk about a watch, he said. Silence. Forks froze midair. I felt the blood drain from my face. He told the story like a fable. How, years ago, he was chatting with an old friend who owns a pawn shop. How they got to talking about the past, about family heirlooms, and about a watch, one that had gone missing. His friend remembered the watch vividly. Had bought it off a young woman a few years back. Took down her ID, just like protocol demands. When Grandpa showed him a photo of Zoe, the man didn't hesitate. That's her, he'd said. Apparently Zoe had wrecked her car while drunk and pawned the watch to cover the repairs. When asked why she was selling something so valuable, she spilled everything, told the pawn guy her mom would cover for her and frame someone else. Grandpa had done his research. He confronted his friend multiple times to be sure, verified the records, double-checked the ID, everything matched. And now here he was telling everyone, in front of everyone. Dad turned pale. Claire went rigid. Zoe's eyes darted around the room like a deer about to bolt. And me? I just stood there. Frozen. Vindicated, yes, but also hollow. Chapter 6. After the bomb, I didn't stay for the fallout. Didn't need to. I left quietly. Got in my car. Drove until the GPS turned into silence and the city lights faded behind me. Grandpa came to visit the next morning. Knocked on my apartment door like nothing had changed. I hope I didn't make things worse, he said, voice rough with concern. No, I whispered. You did what no one else had the courage to. He nodded. They needed to hear it. And maybe they did. But hearing the truth doesn't always mean accepting it. For 4 years, nothing. Not a call. Not a text. Not even a damn forwarded email. Then suddenly, after Grandpa's birthday, my phone was buzzing like I'd won the lottery. Except instead of cash, I was getting voice notes full of apologies and guilt. All from the same man who tossed me out like yesterday's trash. Yeah, Dad. His first message was shaky. Said he was so sorry and had no idea and just wanted a chance to make things right. And I'll be honest, hearing his voice again, it did something to me. Not in a good way. More like pressing on a bruise you forgot was still healing. I didn't reply, but the messages kept coming. At first, he was begging for forgiveness, then blaming Claire, then saying I'd manipulated Grandpa and turned the whole family against him. Classic pivot, from guilt to gaslight. That's when I stopped feeling anything close to sympathy. Chapter 8. One last chance. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe I wanted closure. Maybe I just wanted to see if he could say the words without twisting them. So I texted him back. Let's meet. Neutral place. We settled on this little cafe we used to go to when I was a kid. I figured if things went south, at least the coffee would be decent. When I walked in, he was already there, older, a little hunched, like the weight of guilt finally found its way to his shoulders. He stood when he saw me, didn't try to hug me, just looked nervous. Emily, he said softly. I didn't smile, just nodded and sat. He jumped right in. I messed up. I believed the wrong people. I should have listened to you. It was a decent start. He kept talking about how hard it's been, how embarrassed he was, how he didn't know what to believe back then. And for a moment, I thought maybe he really was sorry. But then came the twist. I just don't understand why Grandpa would do that, he said. You had to have said something. Stirred the pot. I blinked. What? I mean, it's one thing to want justice, but humiliating us like that, in front of everyone? And just like that, the illusion shattered. Chapter 9. The real reason he called. He didn't want to fix anything. He wanted to look like he was fixing it. He wanted me to forgive him so he could go back to playing the victim. Shift the blame again. Pretend I'd exaggerated the whole thing. When I pointed that out, he got defensive. Said I was being cold. That I didn't understand the pressure he was under. That Claire and Zoe had tricked him, and I should be mad at them, not him. I was 17, I said. You kicked me out over a lie. You didn't even let me explain. He sighed. You always were emotional. And there it was. I stood up, pushed in my chair, looked him dead in the eye. Don't contact me again unless you're ready to actually take responsibility. Not just say sorry because you got caught. Then I left. Chapter 10. The fallout starts 2 weeks later. My cousin sends me a screenshot. Zoe posted a cryptic Instagram story about people who can't let go of the past and how family drama is so toxic. Claire was apparently going around telling everyone that I had some kind of grudge and was turning Grandpa against them with emotional manipulation. Right. Because a 21-year-old with student debt and a cat named Pickle clearly has the power to mind control an 80-year-old man into rewriting family history. They weren't just avoiding accountability, they were building a narrative. But that's the thing about liars. They get comfortable. They think the truth is just an opinion waiting to be silenced. They forget that paper trails exist. Chapter 11. Grandpa drops the hammer again. I was minding my own business when Grandpa called. Come by the house, he said. I've got something to show you. Turns out, Grandpa had been doing some digging. After the whole watch incident, something didn't sit right with him. So he went back through old company records, financial statements, account logs. What he found, let's just say it made the watch look like pocket change. Claire and Zoe had been siphoning money out of the family business. Not tens, not hundreds, thousands, over years. Unauthorized withdrawals, credit card charges, fake loan applications under my dad's name, expensive beauty appointments that Claire never went to, Zoe's shopping habits traced to company funds, even a personal loan Claire took out using forged documents just to pay for Zoe's spring break trip to Cancun. I sat there in Grandpa's study, flipping through folder after folder. "This isn't just betrayal," he said. "It's theft. It's fraud." I asked what he was going to do. He looked at me, calm, controlled. "I've already done it." Chapter 12. Goodbye, inheritance within a week. Grandpa disinherited my dad. Completely. Everything that was supposed to go to him? Gone. The family estate, business shares, trusts, all locked down. And a good portion of it transferred to me. Not because I asked, because as Grandpa said, "At least you didn't sell your family for a manicure." He didn't stop there. He made sure Claire and Zoe were blacklisted from touching any family-owned asset. Every lawyer, accountant, and trustee was notified. Grandpa wasn't playing. As for the house my dad was living in, it was actually under a family trust that Grandpa controlled. So guess what? He gave my dad a choice: kick Claire and Zoe out, or leave with them. Guess which one he chose? Chapter 13. Zoe's message. You'd think Zoe would finally feel some remorse. Or Claire might, I don't know, apologize. Nah. I got a DM from Zoe. A paragraph-long sob story about how hard life had gotten. How she didn't mean for things to go this far. How Claire pressured her. How she didn't have the money to cover her bills now that everything was taken from her. And in this part's gold, she asked me for help. No joke. She wanted to know if I'd talk to Grandpa on her behalf. I stared at the message for a solid 10 seconds. Then I replied, "You framed me, lied, took everything. Now you want me to clean it up? No. You made your mess. You live in it. Blocked." Chapter 14. Dad's breaking point. I heard from a distant relative that my dad's house went on the market last week. He's been trying to sell off personal items just to cover living costs. Grandpa made it clear he's done saving him from himself. Apparently, Claire's trying to sue Grandpa. Spoiler, she has no case. Even better, she filed for divorce. After all this, she bailed. The woman Dad sacrificed everything for walked away the second the money stopped. You couldn't write a better ending. I didn't expect silence to feel this loud. After Grandpa dropped the hammer, cutting Dad out, blocking Claire and Zoe from any family wealth, and pulling the rug out from under them, things went weirdly quiet. Not peaceful, just tense. Like everyone was waiting for someone to make the next move. I didn't. I was done playing defense. Let them talk. Let them spin their stories. I wasn't going back into the storm just to defend a truth already proven. Besides, they had their own fires to deal with now. Claire had nowhere to land. The money was gone. The marriage she clung to had collapsed. And her reputation? Let's just say word got around. You don't steal from a family business and expect the rest of the town to forget. Zoe? She couldn't keep up her lifestyle. The car, the rent, the clothes, all on hold. She tried posting curated Instagram photos like nothing had changed, but eventually, people noticed. You can't fake stability forever. Chapter 16. Dad's last stand. I hadn't heard from Dad in weeks. Then one afternoon, I got a handwritten letter. Not a text, not an email. A full-on envelope with my name in shaky writing. I didn't open it right away. It sat on my desk for 3 days. Every time I walked past it, I felt something in my chest tighten. Not anger, not grief, just something heavy. Like a memory that didn't know where it belonged anymore. When I finally opened it, it was 4 pages long. His handwriting had always been neat, but this was different, uneven, like he'd written it between tears. He said he was sorry. Again. Said he didn't know how to be a good father. That Claire made it easy to forget he had a daughter. That he let her take the wheel, and by the time he realized what she was doing, he'd already driven too far in the wrong direction. He didn't ask for forgiveness. Not this time. He just said he hoped one day I'd remember something good about him. I folded the letter. Didn't cry. Didn't rage. Just sat quietly, and let it be what it was, a man who finally understood what he'd lost. Chapter 17. The divorce heard round town. Claire's divorce attempt backfired spectacularly. She thought she'd get alimony, assets, sympathy, but legally, Dad didn't have much left to give. Everything they had together was either under Grandpa's name or burned by Claire's own greed. Their lawyers battled for months, but the result was the same. Claire walked away with almost nothing, not even the house that was already listed for sale under Grandpa's terms. After that, Claire disappeared. No one knows where she went. No more smug Facebook posts. No more passive-aggressive messages to family. She just vanished. Zoe, on the other hand, tried to stay relevant. She bounced around from friends' houses, then landed back at her mom's sister's place across town. I heard she's working retail now. Minimum wage. No car, no vacations. No followers asking for her skincare routine. Karma doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it arrives wearing a name tag and folding sweaters at 9 a.m. on a Sunday. Chapter 18. The real win. People ask if I feel better now. Like this whole revenge story wrapped in a bow. But here's the thing. I never wanted revenge. Not really. I wanted to be heard. I wanted someone, anyone, to say, I believe you. Grandpa did that. And in doing so gave me something better than payback, closure. The money? Sure, it helps. I'm using it to pay off my student loans. Thinking about grad school. I moved into a better apartment with sunlight that spills across the floor every morning like it's happy to be here. But the real win? I sleep easy. No one's watching my every move. No one's calling me dramatic because I cried over a cat or questioning my worth because I didn't play favorite. I built a life with space to breathe, and that's something no inheritance could ever buy. Chapter 19. Grandpa. My lighthouse grandpa's doing well. Slower now. Still sharp. We talk weekly sometimes just about books, sometimes about nothing at all. He's been thinking about moving closer, and I told him he should. He said, funny. I spent so long building for people who never cared. Now, I just want to share what I've got with the ones who do. He doesn't talk much about Dad anymore. Doesn't need to. The silence between them says enough. Sometimes he looks at me, eyes soft and proud, and says, I'm glad you stayed strong, even when none of us deserved it. And I always reply, I stayed strong because you did. Chapter 20. Peace isn't loud. I don't talk about what happened much anymore. Not because I'm ashamed, but because it doesn't need to take up space in my heart every day. I let it go not for them, but for me. I used to think healing would feel like fireworks, like a triumphant scream on a rooftop. But really, it felt like walking home at dusk and not looking over my shoulder. It felt like making tea without waiting for someone to yell. It felt like planting a houseplant and not worrying if it'd survive in a storm. People say forgiveness sets you free. I disagree. Boundaries set you free. Distance sets you free. And sometimes, quietly choosing yourself over and over again, that's the loudest freedom there is. Final words. If you've made it this far, thanks for reading. I don't know what you were expecting. Maybe a rage-fueled takedown. Maybe a courtroom showdown. But life rarely works like that. Sometimes, the people who break you never apologize. And sometimes, the ones who do show up far too late. But if you're lucky, you find one person who believes you. And if you're strong, you become that person for yourself. I did, and I'm finally home. Story 3. So here's a situation I never thought I'd end up in, being told to pack up and leave the house I've lived in for most of my life. By my own father. I'm 25 now, and this house just outside Portland has been mine ever since my grandparents passed. My mom died when I was 10, pancreatic cancer, and after that, my dad basically vanished into a traveling sales job. I stayed with my mom's parents, who raised me like their own. They were incredible people, truly. Granddad taught me to drive in the old Chevy pickup he left me, and Grandma made the kind of pancakes that ruin all other pancakes for life. When they passed, I inherited everything house. a modest savings account, even Grandpa's truck. I stayed. It was home. I kept the garden going, paid the property taxes, and eventually converted the garage into a study space while working on my master's in environmental science. Then my dad re-entered the picture. He'd met someone new, Sabrina. She's in her early 30s, very put together, with 2 young kids from a previous relationship. They're decent kids, actually. Energetic and loud, but respectful. When Dad asked if they could move in for a while, I didn't hesitate. The house has 5 bedrooms and more than enough space. I figured it might even be kind of nice to have some life in the place again. And for the first few months, it was. We'd eat dinner together some nights. Her kids would bring me drawings and ask to use my computer. Sabrina was polite and seemed grateful. But things shifted the second she got pregnant. Suddenly, there were subtle comments. We'll need to start prepping the nursery. It's going to get crowded soon. Maybe we should think about rearranging rooms. I ignored it at first, but then came the not-so-subtle suggestion I should consider moving out. Apparently, they needed my bedroom the master for the new baby, and Sabrina's mom might come stay long-term to help out. Sabrina even floated the idea of me moving into her apartment, and the city offering me a discounted rent while I finished my degree. I remember staring at her like she'd just asked me to gift wrap the deed to my own home. What she didn't know, what my dad never told her, was that this house legally belongs to me. In full. No shared ownership. No co-signed paperwork. Just my name on every single document. He never told her, and I had no idea why. Things hit the boiling point one weekend while Dad was home. Sabrina was walking through the hall with color swatches in hand, talking to her kids about wall decals and baby names. She turned to me and said, "You should start packing soon so we can bring the crib in early." That was it. I told her, calmly but firmly, that this was my house, my grandparents' house, and I wasn't going anywhere. You'd think I threw a chair through the window. Her face went ghost white, then blotchy red. She looked at my dad like he'd committed treason, and to be fair, in her eyes, he had. I told them both they were welcome to stay for now, but I wasn't giving up my room, or moving out, or pretending this was their property. What came next was a mess. Dad took me aside that evening. He tried to reason with me, talked about how Sabrina was stressed, how a new baby needed space, how I was old enough to start being independent. That was rich. I'd been living on my own, paying bills, and keeping the house in shape since he was still hopping from hotel to hotel. I asked him point blank, "Did you ever plan to tell her the house wasn't yours?" He didn't answer. Sabrina, meanwhile, was furious, said I was undermining their future and trying to sabotage her family. Her kids stopped talking to me. She wouldn't even look at me at breakfast. So I asked my dad if they were planning to help with bills, or if they'd considered selling her apartment to buy their own place. She lost it. Apparently her plan was to keep her apartment as an investment, have the baby here, and build stability in a house she thought would eventually be hers. I asked her, "Why would you build stability in a house that doesn't belong to you?" She didn't answer either. The next few weeks were like walking through fog laced with tension. Sabrina's mood swings turned into passive-aggressive comments. Her kids weren't allowed in my part of the house. And my dad? He just kept dodging conversations like I was a coworker he owed money to. I tried to make it work for peace's sake, but it's hard to feel at home when you're being treated like an obstacle. Then came the breaking point. After the blow-up over my room, I thought maybe, just maybe, things would settle. You know how sometimes in families people fight, then quietly back down and move on like nothing happened? I was hoping for that. Some peace, a reset. Nope. Instead, it got worse. A few days after I laid out the truth that the house was mine, Sabrina cornered me in the kitchen. I was mid-toast, standing barefoot, still half asleep, and she just let loose. Said it wasn't fair that she and her kids were living like guests in a home that should belong to their family. I don't know what I was expecting from her, but it wasn't that. I told her calmly, "This is my family's house. I grew up here. This isn't just a roof and some walls. It's all I have left of the people who raised me. She didn't care. She accused me of holding on too tight to the past, of being selfish, of gatekeeping stability from her kids. Then she threw out this line I'll never forget. You're not even raising a family. What do you need a house this size for? Like being child-free and unmarried disqualified me from having roots. The next day, my dad finally confronted me. He looked tired, not angry, just defeated. He asked if I could reconsider. Maybe move out for a while. Give them space. Think about a fresh start somewhere closer to school. I just stared at him. This man who barely raised me, who left me with my grandparents so he could chase opportunity, who missed birthdays and milestones, and my high school graduation was now asking me to give up my home to accommodate his new family. I told him no, again. And this time I didn't sugarcoat it. I laid it all out, how I'd paid the taxes, kept the house running, maintained the yard, handled every repair from plumbing to paint. How this house was more than brick and wood to me. It was where I last hugged my grandma, where I kept my mom's letters, where I felt safe. He didn't like that. I could see it in his jaw. He was trying to be neutral, to mediate, but the cracks were showing. He said something that still stings. Maybe if you were more open to change, this wouldn't be so hard. Change? You mean kicking me out of my home and pretending I'm the unreasonable one? That weekend, Sabrina packed up the kids and left. No conversation, just a cold silence and a note, I need a home where I'm wanted. She moved in with her mom in the city. My dad followed a couple of days later, but not before making one last pitch. He wanted me to sell the house. Said we could split the money, start fresh, give everyone space and a fair shot. I laughed. I didn't mean to, but it came out. It was either that or cry. He tried guilt next. Said I was breaking the family apart, that I was choosing a house over blood. That line, that one cut deep. So I looked him in the eye and said, "No, I'm choosing the people who raised me. You left. They didn't." He left without saying goodbye. I watched him drive off from the front steps, the same spot where my granddad used to stand every morning with his coffee. It was quiet after that, the kind of quiet that fills every room, every hallway. But it was mine, all mine again. For a while, I didn't know what to do with myself. The grief hit different this time, not just for the family I lost years ago, but for the relationship with my dad I realized might never really exist. Thankfully, I wasn't totally alone. My great uncle, my grandma's brother, checked in, came by with groceries, made me laugh, reminded me who I came from. He was the one who first told me I had every right to stand my ground. He told me, blood doesn't give anyone the right to bulldoze your peace. So I stayed put. I focused on my studies, started building something of my own again. The tension was gone, but so was the idea that my dad had my back. Weeks went by. Then, like clockwork, my dad showed up on the doorstep. No warning, just him, looking worn down, eyes heavy. Said he needed to talk. We sat in the living room, the same place where my grandma used to read to me, where the photo albums are still stacked neatly under the coffee table. He apologized, sort of. Said he didn't want things to go this way, that he missed me, that he never wanted to choose sides. Then he asked the impossible. Could they move back in? I thought I misheard him. But no, he was serious. Sabrina, the kids, the baby, they wanted to come back. Said living with her mom was stressful. Not enough room, not enough quiet. And with the baby on the way, they needed a peaceful place to raise their blended family. I didn't yell. I didn't snap. I just asked, what makes you think it would be different this time? He said they'd respect my space, that I wouldn't be asked to move, that things would be clearer this time around. I told him I'd think about it, and I did. For a whole night. I walked through every room, sat in the backyard, flipped through photo albums. Then the next morning, I called him and said no, not out of spite, not out of revenge, out of self-respect. He didn't take it well. Called me selfish, said I was holding on to a grudge, that I'd regret it. I hung up the phone, Not in anger, but in finality. This wasn't just about a house anymore. It was about peace, about boundaries, about choosing not to be the background character in someone else's story. And I was done playing that role. A few weeks passed after that final call. I didn't hear much from my dad, just silence, which was better than the guilt trips. Better than him pretending this was all some misunderstanding I should just get over. But then life, as it always does, found a new way to twist the story. One rainy Tuesday morning, I got a text. Simple. 2 lines: Sabrina gave birth. It's a boy. Thought you should know. No pressure. No request. Just a fact. And honestly, I felt complicated. I didn't hate the baby. He didn't choose this mess. He didn't ask to be born into drama and resentment and adult games. Part of me wondered what kind of life he'd have, being raised in all that tension. Another part just wanted to shut the door and move forward. But of course, that wasn't the end. A few days later, Sabrina herself reached out. I hadn't spoken to her since she left, not a single word. But there she was in my inbox, sending a long message. She said she was overwhelmed, that their living situation was falling apart. Her mother's place was too small, too loud, and my dad's constant commuting was taking a toll. The baby cried all night. Her older kids were sharing a couch. Everyone was exhausted. Then came her pitch. She wanted to move back into the house, said they'd do things differently, promised to respect my boundaries this time, told me she understood now, and that she was sorry for how things went down. And the line that hit me hardest: he deserves a peaceful home. Please don't punish the baby for our mistakes. I sat with that one for a while. It was raining again. Seems like every turning point in my life shows up with clouds. So I called my great uncle. We had tea. I read him the message. He listened quietly, like he always does, then said, "Giving someone shelter is good. Giving them your peace, that's sacred. Be careful which one they're really asking for." That night, I made my decision. The next morning, I called Sabrina and my dad. I told them no. I told them I hoped the baby had a good life, but I couldn't let them bring the chaos back into my home. I said I'd help them look for housing options, send links, maybe even cover the first month's rent if they were truly in a bind. But I wasn't reopening the door to something I already barely survived once. My dad didn't even try to argue this time. He just muttered something like, "I figured," and hung up. Sabrina texted later, said she understood, but that she hoped one day I'd be part of the baby's life. I didn't reply. Weeks passed. I kept studying, working part-time at the university, tending the backyard, planting marigolds along the fence like my grandma used to. Peace settled back in like fog on a still morning. Then out of nowhere, another twist. I got a call from my dad. Said he needed to talk. In person. I didn't know what to expect, but I agreed. We met at a coffee shop a few blocks from the house. Neutral ground. He looked broken, not just tired, worn down in a way I hadn't seen before. And then he told me everything. Sabrina had been siphoning money from his accounts for months, draining savings, using his name to open credit cards, spending money like she was trying to win a game. He found out when the bank flagged a wire transfer to some guy in another state. Turns out, she'd been planning to leave him for someone else, someone she'd been quietly seeing the whole time. When he confronted her, she didn't even deny it. Just told him she needed more, and that if he couldn't give it, she'd find someone who could. He was crushed. The divorce process started right after that. And just like that, everything flipped. He was the one being pushed out now. Sabrina filed for custody, demanded alimony, and tried to go after assets that weren't even his, including my house. But this time, he fought back, showed the courts proof. His lawyer made sure my name stayed far, far away from the mess. Sabrina got a small settlement. Nothing close to what she wanted. And then he said something I never thought I'd hear again. "I'm sorry. For all of it." He didn't cry. Just sat there holding his coffee like it was the last thing tethering him to this world. And I believed him. Not because of his words, but because he finally finally looked like someone who saw the damage he helped cause. He asked if there was any way to start over. Not move in, not fix everything overnight, just rebuild. As father and daughter, I didn't give him an answer that day. I told him I needed time. Truth is, healing doesn't work like a light switch. You can't flip it on just because someone finally sees the dark. But I did let him visit. Slowly, carefully. One lunch here, one errand there. We found rhythm in small things, like changing the oil in Granddad's truck, or fixing a loose porch board. Things that didn't need big conversations, just quiet shared effort. And in time, he started to feel like a dad again. Not perfect, not all forgiven, but human. A few months after that, something good happened. He met someone new, Laura. Kind, soft-spoken, worked as a nurse. Had an adult daughter already living on her own. No drama, no schemes. Just normal. When he asked if Laura and her daughter could move in temporarily, I surprised myself and said yes. But with one clear condition. He had to tell her the truth about the house. From day one, and he did. To her credit, Laura didn't flinch. She thanked me for sharing my space, said she'd treat it like a blessing, not an expectation. And so far, that's exactly how it's been. The house feels alive again. But not like before, not chaotic, not tense, just whole. Sometimes I walk the garden path at sunset and think about everything that's happened. How grief and betrayal almost made me give up the last thing that felt like home. How silence can be louder than screaming. How blood doesn't always mean loyalty. And how forgiveness doesn't always mean letting people back in. This place, these walls, this land, this legacy, it held me when no one else did. And now it's holding new stories. Ones I chose, ones I built. And if you're wondering whether I regret not letting them move back in, not even for a second.